Well, greetings everybody, and welcome to the Inworld review. Yes, a long, long time ago, in a virtual world not so far away, there was a show called Inworld Review, and it went somewhere, and it overheated, but it's cooling down now, and it's back. So here we are with a purpose at least. I'm Mal Burns, your sort of host here. So co-host, as it were, next to me, James Atloud, who's also doing a wonderful job filming on all our cameras behind the scenes. So welcome, James.
Oh, thank you, Mel. I really enjoy doing this.
Yeah. And I've got two guests with us today. We're going to actually be talking with them about two different things, or well, related. One is the Avatar Fest, which is coming up, not too distant future, and all about what you can do to participate and everything else like that. And we're also going to have a look at the state of affairs where the hypergrid and stuff is concerned a little bit. Because it's long overdue, and so people have been mentioning various things. And we will be here with this show again next week. In fact, well, we'll be joined by Art Blue, talking about art biennial and various other things. So maybe we'll be here every week. Again, before long, we will see. There are a lot of contentious issues on the agenda these days, so I think we're quite keen to address those, even if it means the show will become a little bit different from what it was. Okay, so our guests this week, as I said, principally we're going to be talking about Avatar Fest, and I've basically got two of the main people behind it here. Firstly, we have Handheld. Welcome, Han.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And we have Erin Kalen. I don't know why I always say Galen, but it's Kalen. So Erin Kalen. Welcome, Erin.
No, hi, glad to be here. But this is actually my lightweight avatar that I'm using for HG travel because the other one has just an inventory that's a bit too big.
Oh,
So
very
this
good.
is Galen.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I wish I could just type it around with just my suitcase and the rest of it didn't come, but no such luck. You can't control that, is exactly. Right, okay. Well, let's get started, first of all, with Avatar Fest. This has been going for quite a few years now. Is it 3, 4 in all? I'm not, I forget.
This is the fourth one.
Fourth,
It
isn't it?
started in
Yeah.
2015, so
Yeah.
this would be, I guess, the third year of it. Fourth festival, third year, kind of confusing.
Yeah. Well, it's very much an established sort of event on the hypergrid, and it's one of those major hypergrid event, which is obviously all these things tend to attract people, residents of the grid it's held on, but Avatar Fest has always been this sort of hypergrid kind of event, just like the safaris were, the Open Sim Community Conferences, and arguably, the experts on Tangle Grid even are, deliberately pitched, to, hypergrid
We've tried to
travelers,
be
the free,
agnostic. We've tried to be
yeah,
grid agnostic as much as we can.
yeah. It's the best way because I think we'll talk about this later, but somehow when you have an event or something that is associated with a particular grid, that association sometimes takes a sort of dominance, and then suddenly you find if your intention is to be something very much more global, and you become associated with a particular grid, it can be, I think, a bit restraining. All it will need is somebody to not like that grids, and then they don't like your event, and so on and so forth.
And
Well,
also,
we're going to,
why leave out the rest of the hypergrid too? I mean,
yeah,
regardless of what your event is, if you just, like, say I'm in Metro, I'm in 3RG, if I just did an event for Third Rock Grid, then I'm leaving out everyone in Metro, I'm leaving out everyone in OS Grid, et cetera, et
yeah,
cetera, et cetera. Why would I want to do that? I'd want to get in as many people as I'd want to for the effort I put out.
absolutely, and it's not. Well, exactly. I mean, one of the great things. I mean, even going back to the days of when Second Life was the only option. If you had a book club, and you know, um, it was a book club about novels um, featuring yellow fish. Stupid, right? Okay. Now, I don't know whether there is a novel featuring yellow fish, but the point is, a book. There might only be 6 members for a book club like that in the whole darn world. So, holding it virtually means you break that geography and, those 4 members may be members of grids all over the planet, but they will convene at that book club because these 4 sad people want to talk about novels featuring yellow fish. You know, um, and that I think is, that sounds like a silly anecdote, but I mean, I think that proves the point really of what is so good about it. The Avatar Fest, for example, is a celebration, isn't it, of what avatars as personalities, artists, whatever, are doing all over the darn place. And it's not as restrictive as a book club, but which is talking about books. It's about a whole vista of creativity and social stuff. But
Well, like
nevertheless,
I said,
it's a focal point for the world. Yeah,
for Avatar Fest specifically,
yeah,
the whole intent has been pretty much from the beginning to encourage people to do creative stuff on their Sims and to show it off. I want to give people who are just not necessarily professionals, not necessarily trained, although some trained people have come through the years, but not people who, just pretty much anyone. The people who, as we say on the website, live and rent out here, what they do with the regions. We want that to be a showcase for, so that way people come out and go, oh, well, they've got a region, they do this cool thing. Those people have a region, they do that cool thing. I want to take part in this as well, as opposed to something like OSCC, where it's like, okay, we're doing this thing in the enterprise, we're doing this thing with our corporation and their corporation. You go to it as someone who isn't on that level, isn't in IT, isn't an executive, and you go, what does this have to do with me? Avatar Fest is meant to be more, this has to do with you because you can, put up your own region and do something similar, whatever takes your imagination. Would you like to say a few words on that, Aaron? Maybe clarify?
Yes. Your thoughts about it, Aaron. Oh, your definition, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I can only reiterate what Han said basically. Because it was originally Han's idea, and Han continues to be the driving force. I'm just more the organizers behind the scenes. But for me, Avatar Fest has always been just a show and tell, basically, of normal users. It's part of it is that we wanted to have people the opportunity to show off their own projects. Part of it was we wanted to create an event where people actually get together, which is a true hypergrid event, and not. I mean, we do it on a standalone hypergridded server, which is basically what we want to be completely independent from any grid. So it's whoever you are, wherever you are, if you dream, if you have a project, which is not commercial, and that's the one thing that we don't want, because there's enough of
there's plenty
commercial
of
stuff.
outlets for that. Yes.
Yeah. Commercial things by their nature do not suffer lack of advertising or exposure.
Exactly. Great way of putting it. Thank you.
So that was the basic idea, and that still is. It's basically a fun way of expanding the horizon.
Sure. Okay. Well, that August the 6th, right. I'm actually, while we've been talking, I've been glancing at your press release, actually on Hypergrid Business, where they've reprinted it, I guess. So I guess one of the first things we can tell people, we'll mention it later so people can pick up a pen and paper if they need it in the meantime. But the location of the festival is actually avatarfest.net colon, and then the port number is 6,000. Which is slightly different from the usual 8,000 or whatever. So it's important you guys are making note of the right port number, or you never know where you may end up. The fairgrounds or the festival grounds, as it were, are avatarfest.net colon 6,000. Now, is that actually open yet, or is it open for people who are actually taking stuff and building there, or is that simply the address and it will open on a
We're
certain day?
setting up the region, and we expect to get builders in this week. It'll be open to the public on October 5th. Until
Right.
then, it's just going to be whoever's setting up their exhibits. The one thing I'd like to point out is that October 5th to the 7th will be the dates for events, but the region itself will be open until November 30th. It's just that it will be more of a static exhibit, but people always always put out a lot of creative exhibits, and I would encourage people to just come at any time, more than once, you know.
Right, of course. Now, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which are the 5, 6, 7 days, of course, a weekend. I don't see you've actually just got 3 performers down. If it sounds like there's, well, you've got Torben Asp, I know, headlining on Saturday. But a great keyboard player there. Are you still? Hang on a sec. Are you still looking for performers? No, all the slots are filled. It says, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to keep in the past year, there's 2 things going on. Number one, I'm part of the Confederation of Democratic Simulators in Second Life, so I'm kind of splitting my attention between the two. So there have been problems in past years with scheduling conflicts and such with performers. So this year I looked at the fact that, I'm splitting my attention, and, there's been problems. So I just decided pretty much a maximum of 1 performer per day, with the exception of Sunday, where Oshi Shikigami will be doing a reading, and then I will be doing my first DJ set, because it's going to be my intro to DJing at 3RG, I'm hoping. So, and yeah, I was blown away that Torben Asp has donated his time and is going to perform for us. That is really awesome. And of course, DJ Stranik, he always puts on like mega shows, not just like, okay, it's 65 minutes, I'm out of here. He goes for hours, like 8 hours at a time, and he's like, well, I'm going to beat my record this year, so that's going to be something to see. I really think so, and he's an awesome guy, very supportive, so.
That's definitely a long gig. I presume your debut won't be trying to copy him.
Be a heck to host that, that's for sure. But it'll be fun to be there, that's for sure.
Of course. Okay, now you've I suppose what we're coming to here now is the deadline for exhibitor applications is actually still quite a ways off yet, September the 8th. Exhibitors, it's really that looks to me to be really about the only thing that is still open for applications. Is that right?
Yeah, they're filling up, but we still have probably like about, I think, a few slots, that are left open. So yeah, the performers is filled. We could always use more people to volunteer to just kind of hang out and, just kind of greet people and make people feel welcome. So if anyone wants to apply to volunteer, we would love to have you, come over and help out on the 5th, 6th, and 7th. So that's really about it. And I will be taking applications, kind of a soft deadline until September 8th. Yeah.
Right. That's oh yeah. Well, yeah. This is it's still months before the day of the thing, isn't it? So yeah. Okay, that's good. So that's approximately 2.5 weeks from now, isn't it? I can't believe all this
Yeah,
is
but
almost
the
gone
thing is
again.
that we have about 4 plots left now.
Right. So
Yeah,
basically,
4 or 5. Yeah. So
anybody watching now who wants
Yeah, so
one
you don't want to
better
wait
be quick.
until, I mean, they may be gone, and I'm not exaggerating. They may be
Yeah.
gone by next Wednesday, you know.
Sure.
It's unlike most years, they've really filled up really fast.
All right. Okay. So off your asses, folks. Apply quickly if you want a spot, or I guess you can be a bit more leisurely if you just want to volunteer. I suppose there's no real urgency there, but advance warning still helps. Okay, and so. Have I missed anything on Avatar Fest itself? Anything, deadlines or activities that are going to be part of it that you want to get in before we move on?
Not right at this moment, no. No, that's pretty much everything. I just want to emphasize that we have the performances the 5th to the 7th, but the region will be open until November 30th. So, you know, don't feel pressured like, okay, it's the 8th, I've missed it. Oh, dang, you know, come until, you know, anytime after that.
Sure. Okay, great. I will also take this opportunity to say there's a really nice advertising poster for this one. We've got a big physical copy of it behind you there, and we've got another display camera somewhere with a somewhat stretched out version. But it's nice, yeah, it's got a nice feel to it. You know, very neutral, old-timey sort of poster. It's a good one. Very attractive, I must say. You were telling me about the stuff in that post. You might as well tell me again. Tell the audience again. You got the title and the curtain, the last act. But yeah, you got other symbolism and stuff behind it, haven't you? Behind this chap. Was that what you were telling me earlier?
Well, what I was saying is that, yeah, we've got actually two things there, which are designed by Aaron's friend. We have the logo, which we came up with, I believe is like what, around January, Aaron?
yeah, around that time,
yeah. And then later on, about May, I believe, we had decided for different reasons that I listed in the Google Plus post that this was going to be the last year we do this. So Erin turned to her friend, and her friend made up the going off the stage poster there with, the different things that we do, the exhibits, the fun,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's going to be caned, drug off with a cane in the festival.
Yeah, I know. It looks like very innocent.
That's I think that's just metaphorical. But the exhibits and the fun, hopefully, like I said, I think it's going to be a great festival this year. So.
Okay. Well, as you said, the title there, of course, or the subtitle for this year is called The Last Act. It fits the theatrical theme, doesn't it? And the curtain comes down on the last act. But as you mentioned, this is the last year. And something that rung a bell with me, I think, when I was reading your press release is you actually start off by saying you talk about changes in the social fabric of the hypergrid, and that this will be the last year of Avatar Fest, which celebrating end user creativity. And you then go on to say Vision X has folded, hypergrid business is decreasing focus, HG Safari is wound down, and you feel in your heart and bones that it's time for Avatar Fest to join them. Now, not to put it down on this year's Avatar Festival, folks, it's going to be great, and there's still plenty of people around do stuff. You mentioned passing the torch and making room for something else. Now, forgetting democratic simulators business in Second Life, um, I too have beginning to get an odd feeling. It's something that on another level we mention, it seems, every year when we're getting ready for the OpenSim Community Conference, which is a much more sort of almost academically educational sort of thing. It's end user in a way, but not. It's not.
Well, they're
party.
the professionals. We're the amateurs. I mean,
Yeah,
like I said, we're
but
amateur hour in a good way. You know, we
yeah,
are giving the amateurs their voice and a platform so that they
sure.
have something they can take part in instead of like looking in from the street or whatever.
Yeah. Well, we, I'm part of OCC, in fact, but also, Serge and I came up with the foreign language thing of Hypergrid International Expo and things as offshoots of that, and again, probably more of a focus on the users rather than the exponents. Is that the right word? But anyway, getting away from that per se. Um, it's always been an issue in the coming up to the OCC too, or for the last couple of years, from my point of view too, is so where is it going? Well, where is the significance thing that has happened in the last year, that we could be focusing on? And then you suddenly think, well, it's really just the same as last year, isn't it? And that sort of feeling that although the platform is great and things that are happening are great and everything else, there doesn't seem to be, the platform isn't changing that much. It's not, really developing into anything, improved. And in some ways, the use of it is sort of, you sometimes feel that although it's grown, it has started to begin to flatline again. And then, of course, we've had this calamity with Inworlds recently, which Inworlds was never on the hypergrid, and it had a completely different engine running it. It was more like a alternative Second Life, but it began, with the same spirit of open simulator code and stuff like that. And although it became a closed grid and never, had moved away from the hypergrid before the hypergrid came, kind of thing almost, you felt it was like a bit of the same part of the same community. There were certainly people who would have Second Life avatars and OpenSim avatars somewhere and an in-worlds avatar for different reasons. They used to offer much better physics, more space, more prims, and there were a whole load of people that went initially from Second Life, I think, into Inworlds and sort of bypassed, the rest of the open sim thing. But I'm really want to hone in on sort of your thoughts, maybe contribute, butt in as
Yeah,
appropriate.
I'm just kind of sort of, I don't want to talk over you, so I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
I do have a lot of thoughts on it, but I will try to like keep them brief. One thing I'd like to say by way of introduction on that subject, and it comes down to, if I may, I want to kind of sort of go into why I feel that it's time for me to step aside, me specifically. In HGB, excuse me, I gave who turned out to be Ubit a little bit of stick about, you look like you're out of touch and you're supposed to be representing people. And, Ubit, if you're listening, I feel bad about that because you get enough crap as it is. But so I'm looking at myself in 2018 and I'm reading comments on OpenSim World, and I'm talking to people in World, and I look at what people wear, I look at where they got it from, and I have this sense that when it comes to I don't know what the heck's going on. I'm in the same spot that I was criticizing Ubit for, and I think that is my primary problem. I don't want to put myself out there as I represent blah when, blah has moved on, is doing something else. There's a lot of interest in Avatar Fest, and we've had, I cannot believe the response we've had. I don't know about Aaron, but I was shocked in a good way. But
in general, or this year in particular?
This year in particular. That when I saw how many last last night, Aaron and I sat down and counted the submissions, and we're like, wow, you know, because I'd had no idea. I thought they were like half of what they actually are. So, you know, there is interest, and we do represent some part of the community. But on the other hand, you read forums and you talk to people, and I am out of touch. So I figured that those people need to come together and do their thing. I need to get out of the way, stop sucking up the oxygen in the room, and let them do their Avatar Fest or whatever that represents where they're coming from.
Sure.
It has a bit to do with mood change, I think. For me personally, I think that the people who are now in OpenSim, especially the people who came from XYZ, and haven't been in there as long as we guys have, I think they have a whole different mindset. So I think it's sort of also a process of rejuvenation that we step aside and say, you know, you people, whoever, you take over, you do your thing.
You know, I've been doing the not this show, but we've been doing something every Sunday for I think it's 12 or 13 years. I keep thinking, I want to just crash and let something else take over. I do sense that feeling. I mean, one distinction I've always made in my mind, I guess, between the hypergrid and I'm actually going to say somewhere like Inworld, although or actually really even Second Life. You know, the pioneers. I mean, there are some you know, innovative artists and things.
The pioneers
still
are coming
Second Life.
back, interestingly enough.
In Second Life.
No, in OpenSim.
Yeah, well, that's what I think. You know, the mindset to me is there's any sense of exploration and innovation and that kind of cutting edge stuff of Second Life. I don't think it's there anymore. You still see some great stuff in there, and it's huge, but it all seems to be, apart from the creators and businesses that are in there, you know, the dominant strand now is not creators. It's like, you know, the people who want to go to parties and clubs and have their avatars dancing. And I don't know, it also, it was something about Second Life that always did feel a bit sameish in terms of, you know, default architectures and things. But, you know, it feels a bit lost in time, even though it's got a lot
In
of people
places,
there.
yeah.
And whereas in OpenSim, it's the exact opposite. You occasionally find an enclave in a tribe in a particular grid that, you know, I don't know, medieval role players or something, you've moved from Second Life to some grid on OpenSim where, you know, it's just better suited for their role play. They can afford more land and stuff like that. But generally speaking, and Thursa, I know, agrees with this, you know, when with the Safari and things, you felt you were always jumping around to the unexpected, and, you know, there were no rule books here, there, or everywhere, and you didn't feel like you weren't the customer of a corporation, you know, it was like a free form, interconnected thing. And there was that kind of pioneering spirit there, the sort of person who was on OpenSim as a rule, maybe excluding some of the bigger commercial grids now, you know, had that much more free and easy, you know, pioneering spirit than, you know, what you found in the more established worlds. And I mean, obviously, in what I do, I follow things like High Fidelity, Science Base, and even Sansar, and a few other virtual worlds now. None of them capture the potential spirit that is still here on the hypergrid and in OpenSim. I mean, most of those worlds you can't actually build in them. You've got to be a creator who knows how to build out of world and then
I think
import
that's
stuff.
kind of the bottom line right there.
Yeah.
There, for me, I've explored all of those at some point in time or another, and I've lost interest simply because I'm, you know, I'm in a 3D world, but I'm not really a 3D fanatic. I'm not going to go get an Oculus. I'm not interested in it, you know, and it's not even like Oculus bad or Oculus good. It's just doesn't have anything to do with me, don't want to do it, not my interest. So that limits me. You know, Sansar, I guess, has focused on the desktop again. I was reading that like a couple months ago, but even so, they don't have the creativity, as you mentioned. They don't really have, none of these worlds easily facilitate in-world building, and they don't have an inbuilt culture of, you know, it begins with a single prim, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. James will tell you, and actually, I'm sure you've watched this program often enough to know my feelings about helmets and bumping into lampposts. I actually did disgracefully, when it came to England a couple of months ago, on the first day, I managed to get myself an Oculus Go, which is the untethered one, and it doesn't do much.
Well, that's kind of your job as a media, is to take the bullet for us consumers so that you can go, no, this sucks, guys.
Well, this is the sort of thing I could actually wear for. It's not comfortable to wear for more than about 15 minutes, but let's say I was taking an hour and a 2-hour train journey. This would fit in a bag. It's untethered. I could put that on, and I could, you know, just as we put headphones on to have our private music, I will put this on to have my private screen. And I can see the use for that, especially as it's untethered. In other words, I can take it with me. I don't have to have all I actually needs a Wi-Fi connection. I don't actually have to, you know, plug it into some computer or with a, you know, super powerful processor. It's all lightweight in the headset. I'm not raving about it since getting it. I haven't hardly used it, but you know, whenever something comes up that I'm reading about, I think, oh, there's this, you know, 15 minutes experience. Maybe I'll check it out, and I do. But I don't,
Well, I can see it fitting a niche where I've got a tablet that I've started because of Kindle books. I've started getting more into my tablet last couple of years. And,
yeah,
you know, if I'm out at, say, Starbucks, I have no real way to check in with OpenSim or Second Life. You know, I mean, there's the Lumia, I believe it's pronounced, viewer, but the screenshots I've seen have been, was something like you're describing that fills that niche where it's like, okay, I'm out in public, I'm on the train, as you said, you know, I'm going to pop this on, but you know, for the day-to-day thing, well, you're still here, right?
Yeah. Second Life used to have a client. It was made for them by the Vvolx voice client, in fact. I think it was just called Slight or something, but it allowed you to simultaneously log in twice, once in a text client and once in World. And the Slight thing, it was like a Skype, really, not with video, but you could see your contacts, you could organize your inventory, you could no, sorry, not inventory, you could call like a phone to an avatar in World, even though you were actually on a desktop or a laptop somewhere. And it disappeared, and I always thought it was a real shame that went. But then we did get this whole breed on the iPad. I had Pocket Metaverse, which for some reason doesn't seem to work anymore. I think it may be in 32-bit, and Apple have blocked it. There's the Lumia, isn't it, on Android?
Yeah.
And on the desktop here, still make quite good use of a program called Radagast, which allows me to log into a text interface, and I can keep tabs on people in Second Life or in the Great Canadian Grid without actually being logged into those worlds. You know, if I'm in a world, I'll be in this world.
Yeah, that's a great client. It pretty much runs on anything. I mean, Linux, what the heck ever, probably BSD.
But one thing I did actually mention this to Philip the other day, because he was asking, you know, questions about, you know, what's good, what's bad, and what do we need and stuff. And you know, I've long since kind of tuned out to that, you know, VR, the new big thing, because usually they're talking about hardware, not content.
Right. And I'm the same way for the same reason.
And also, you know, to me, take a world like this, the studio we're in now, or actually pretend we're in the mountains outside the studio. You know, just a great world. Now, I think what's important is that world, not because it's mine, but any world I might be in, the environment I'm in, and the things I can do. Now, if I happen to want to plug in a headset, fine. If I want to plug in Elite Motion so I can do my hands with my real hands kind of thing, fine. If I want to use a plugin as a plugin where you can use your webcam to generate animations for your avatar, all sorts of different things. And let's say I was using my webcam to animate my avatar, right? You'd all see me animating the avatar. You wouldn't necessarily know. You see the end result. You wouldn't necessarily know I was using a camera to do it, right? And that, I think, is the beauty of it, because we can all choose what we're comfortable with or what we want at a given time, but it shouldn't be hardware specific. Um, you know, both High Fidelity and Sciencebase want to be mobile because they consider it's not so much the headset thing or the desktop thing. They reckon the market they have to crack is the mobile market, which is bigger than
Which
either
they're
the
probably
desktop.
right.
Yeah, it's bigger than either the desktop or the helmet jobs, let alone any other whatever. But I actually always thought, if I got a pair of glasses, then a tiniest little wheel, like reading spectacles, where I can go from opaque to transparent or halfway, and a little cable or Bluetooth that goes from that into my iPhone. So that the engine running the glasses is actually the mobile phone. So if a virtual world wants to be available on mobile, why not have it as something that can be on that small phone screen, almost unusable, but the moment you put some glasses on, it becomes usable because it all gets bigger and comes into your face. Now
Right, or if you
I
use
like.
one of the adapters that kind of turn your phone into a VR's goggles or whatever.
Yeah, they don't work. They make the phones overheat when you put them
Oh
on.
no,
I mean,
didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, this.
And now we're back to
understand.
me being out of touch. So yeah,
I soon discovered that it was literally ruining everything I stuck into the cardboard plastic. The plastic was staying cool enough, but every device was
geez,
overheating.
like the $20 plastic is fine, but the $100 phone is
The
yeah.
mobile phone, my mobile phone I used, which fortunately was a fairly cheap Asus thing, not an iPhone. Its battery swelled up and the screen swelled with it. So what was started out as a flat object gradually became a thin oval and then a slightly fatter oval. And the battery was just swelling up and bending the screen outwards from the middle. And all because it was sitting in a cardboard thing, and it wasn't ventilated enough or something, and the processors were overworking to try and do what they were meant to do. But no, I actually like the Oculus Go. I like, not because it's not a clunky thing, but basically you're looking at a display and it's got some standalone hardware behind it. But I like the idea of the glasses that are simply two monitors, right, with a bit of tech surrounding them. But I don't like the idea that the Oculus and the HTC Vive and the Oculus Go are actually processing this stuff themselves. I think it'd be much more economical if a phone was doing it. But I'm not talking about a phone on your head. I'm talking about a screen, a pair of glasses that act as a screen on your head and plug in or communicate with a phone that's in your
Bluetooth,
pocket.
something over Bluetooth with your phone.
Yeah, and the phone can be doing all the hard work in your pocket. I mean, I've got one of these Apple Watches here, and I can answer the
I
phone
think my
on
phone
it.
would probably just like explode if I tried to do anything like that. It's like
Yeah,
I've got like what 800 megs on of RAM period for it, and it's like Android fills up like 750. So it's like,
yeah.
no, you're not doing anything else with this.
It's not. It's not practical, and especially for a load of people at the moment. I mean, not everybody. I don't know how much this phone costs, but it's not cheap.
Yeah, I have a
And
few criticisms of it. I think for me, there's three biggies. First biggie is that, and this may be mitigated with high fidelity. I haven't looked at it in a while, but you don't have the top to bottom thing that you have with OpenSim. With OpenSim, you can potentially control every layer of it yourself on your computer forever. You know, it's not another company, it's not Google, it's not Linden Lab, it's you, you know, although of course obviously hosting and grids and stuff exist, but that doesn't exist in the mobile space to the best of my knowledge. Second thing is in-world building. I don't, you know, maybe with the whole 3D rig, you could do some building. I could actually see how maybe in 5-10 years it'd be really cool. You manipulate objects with your hands or something, but we're not yet there yet to the best of my knowledge. So you're not going to have the in-world building, the in-world creativity with that. And the third and final thing is immersion and role play. Most of these are based on voice. And the focus, you know, you're not going to really, you know, you go in there and the emphasis is more being on you as opposed to like Second Life. You're like, well, you can be a vampire, you can be a zombie, you can be a floating wooden airship if you are so inclined, you know? So I'm kind of thinking that it's a different mindset than the OpenSim world. And OpenSim and Second Life both have a lot of advantages over it, at least for me. You know, maybe it's just my age or something, but you know, those three things are big priorities to me. So,
well, I know for a fact that OpenSim and Second Life, for that matter, can't really be viewed in a 3D headset, you know, a full 3D environment. There's ways of faking it. I think there was a viewer control or something, I think, or so that tried to do it. But it was kind of workaround thing. It was mostly because the platform wasn't built to be. It was built to be 3D, but it wasn't necessarily built to be navigated.
Well, it was built to be the rig.
Sorry?
The frame rate on OpenSim is too slow also.
Yeah, massively.
Oh, yeah.
That was the big thing
that's
that made
true.
people sick. Yep.
Yeah. You know, so I don't know where we are now, sitting here on this platform or in Second Life or anything. You know, we're really out of the loop in terms of that kind of interfacing, unless somebody comes up with some kind of client that can really render.
Well, it depends.
You know?
I see, to me, I don't know, the mobile space, the Oculus 3D space doesn't have a whole lot to do with what I'm doing today. It doesn't have anything to really do with what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. And I don't think that I'm going to be alone here in OpenSim. As I said before, I've been running into people who were around in 2008, people who were around in 2010, and they're coming back and they're going, hey, what's up? You know, what's going on? I want to, they've heard about the Inworld's flap and they're like, they're wanting to find out what's going on. And they're, you know, in one case, they're like going, hey, you know, let's start something up. So things are going to go on. It's kind of a mix of things. And as I said, the high fidelity world, the Sansar world's going to go on. There's no question about that. But I think that with Fred's Dream Worlds installer, that's going to keep OpenSim going for a long, long time. I think there's going to be people out here for a long, long time doing things, you know, building, making their spaces and whatever the heck the kids do these days.
I agree with you about.
I think that's the main difference, actually. Is OpenSim is for the creative people who do stuff, whereas the 3D world, because you have no in-world building, because you have no easy way of doing any creation, the people that you have there are the consumers, in my opinion.
I agree completely.
Yeah, I think it's that totally describes Second Life to me. And I mean, there's more to it than just that. But at its inception, there are pioneers and there are a lot of creators who realized what they could do with that platform. Nowadays, there are simply consumers and manufacturers.
Yeah, that's like I said, and I don't really want to sound, probably sounds horribly patronizing, so I'm going to prefix this by saying I have not been terribly out in the mobile space, but my impression is that it's very consumer centered. You are you go out to passively take in something that someone else has built. In
Yeah.
OpenSim and in Second Life, that is becoming more the case, but I go out, I build half a sim, I build a full sim. Anyone does, you know, and it's more active, more engaged, more interactive than the mobile space, in my perception. I may be wrong, but that's been my experience to date.
How do you
Well,
feel?
mobile
Sorry.
space, I think, is you can't really build because it's just also too small.
Yeah,
How are you going to
my
build?
go.
You gotta see
Absolutely.
what you're doing. And
Absolutely.
this
I
for
mean,
me is the limiting factor. You have if you have a world, if it's already established, if you just want to go in and have a bit of fun, fair enough using the mobile space. But
Sure.
I can't see anybody building in that.
I think it's a matter of adaptability. I mean, in the future, I could quite see a mobile phone turned, landscape having the equivalent of this OpenSim on it, you know. But as you say, the screen's too small. But if in that hypothetical future, instead of a helmet, you can just put on a pair of glasses that bring the screen to your eyes, and it still runs on the mobile, then just by having a portable big screen, you may suddenly find that that size works. And then, of course, the actual operating system could be may not even be a phone. It may be still something else mobile, like a tablet.
Well, Google's
The
working
only, the
on
only,
their operating system, which is to
yeah.
replace Android and Linux, blah, blah. I don't know about the 3D thing. My roommate is kind of sort of big into it. I would imagine that if there's anything along those lines, which not really my thing, but I would imagine it would be more the full body experience. You would have to have something comfortable and unobtrusive, like, gloves or some sort to manipulate the objects while you look at them through goggles or something like that. But again, my main focus is OpenSim and Second Life. I'm not really in touch with the rest of any of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I probably am a bit more because I do follow. I mean, I spend most of my day on my iPad just following news and tweeting it and stuff.
Sure.
But over on my workstations, if I'm not doing a bit of video, then I'm logged into this grid. And if I wanted to, I can when I'm out and about on a tube train or something, I've got Wi-Fi, so I could technically can log into the world here using something like Radagast. But you'll never be able to operate your home server on a mobile phone because you're going to be going in and out of connectivity. This grid works because I've got another computer beside me here that is just 24/7 running the
Yeah, one of the
grid.
nice things about OpenSim is that you can run it on some. I mean, based on what I read 8 years ago, which 8 years ago, it doesn't hit the CPU that hard. It doesn't hit the disk that hard. That may have changed, but that was what the wiki said back around 2010, 2011.
It's we're now. I'll give you an idea actually, because we're now in here, right? There's me and there's four of us, so you've got to allow for the fact that it has to cope with interactions between possibly 16 interactions, 4x4, yeah, as well as the build and everything else, and it's using just over 28% of the processor, but it's going between 28 and 9, so it's toggling up and down. And that's running it. But normally when I'm in here on my own or just one person's visiting, it's barely uses 5% of the processor and hardly any of my RAM. I mean, I've got enough to play with. But
Yeah, by myself, I've run 25 regions, just dinking around with door scripts and things like that, and not hit 4 gigabytes of RAM. So yeah, it's very resource-wise, it's very economical.
Yeah. The thing is, doing it our way like that does actually require that your world has a server somewhere, and it's another problem really for high fidelity because
that same server, I invited people over, and after about 6 people just fell over. Forget it, not working, go to heck.
Ah, right. Well, I can cope with enough for the programs. So I think, I deliberately don't let Safari tours and stuff come here because
Yeah,
I know it would just
it's
get
just
bang.
like kaboom, right?
Yeah, it's not here for that. It's my private island. I'll have a couple of guests or a TV show going, and that's it. But High Fidelity actually, one of the newer platforms, as you said, you're not that in touch, but they too rely when you launch the High Fidelity Viewer client, it runs the server in the background, and that server again is on your own machine, so it's actually a bit like the Outwall setup because where your inventory and stuff is saved in High Fidelity is
Well, yeah,
actually
but
in the sandbox.
with high fidelity specifically, and again, this is based on probably like 6 months ago, maybe it's changed, but their equivalent of the asset server is wherever the heck Phil is hosting it. It's closer to
Oh
OS
yeah,
Grid,
it's
so you're not like doing the top to bottom thing. Um,
sure, yeah.
he's exploring the hypergrid concept, which is great and awesome, and actually do keep half an eye on that, because I think that could be a next generation. Well, I thought that until they took out local chat, in which case I was like, okay, but yeah, it
The
is exciting.
reason I mention that actually is because if High Fidelity, for example, say they're interested, they need to start thinking about mobile, right?
Sure.
Then how on earth could High Fidelity ever work on a mobile? Because unlike my Outworlds install, where I can have the server at home and High Fidelity on another client, a mobile client, OpenSim mobile client. With High Fidelity, the two are tied together when you install High Fidelity. Now, was the moment you launched High Fidelity's viewer, it launches the server, and that just wouldn't work on a mobile phone. You'd have to be searching for Wi-Fi. You wouldn't have a strong enough signal for the
Yeah, you
server
couldn't do the
component.
viewer. I think it's
Yeah.
possible to do the server separately. I don't know. I don't remember, but
Uh,
you're not going to do the viewer on a phone, especially with like, I've got a gig of RAM. Boom. Now I don't, it's like,
yeah.
no, that's not going to work.
And it's just the connectivity is just totally unreliable anyway. But let's get back. As I've said, I am more home here on OpenSim than anywhere else. I don't like the commerce and the flooding of, also, the social thing in Second Life is, I get depressed. I think, who are these
Well,
people?
the thing about Second Life, I kind of
Are they
have
all this?
with Second
Sorry.
Life, I've got a bit of a different perspective, and I argued with a friend on SL Universe about this because he came on. He's like been on Second Life for like 11 years now. He's like, "There's no one freaking there." I log on and there's no one there, and I'm like, "Well, it's funny because when I log on to Second Life or when I log on to OpenSim, my IMs don't necessarily light up, but once a day, few times a day, people are like, "Hey, Han, what's up? Can you this? Can you that?" In Second Life, it just boom, So I think it's a matter of investment and all that. I mean, a ton of people in Second Life. I know a ton of people in Second Life. God help Selby Evans, who I know knows a lot. It's you if you've invested time in the personal relationships there, you're going to see people. You're not going to be that alone. But if you don't, if you just kind of go on and you're like, okay, I'm sticking to my sandbox and sandbox, it is going to be a lonely place. But that's true of OpenSim. That's true of
It's
High
true of the real
Fidelity.
world.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
It's true of the real
Regardless.
world.
Sure. Yeah,
In the
exactly.
real world,
Yeah.
if you don't make
Yeah.
friends and cut
Well,
yourself off,
actually, I don't know. The funny thing is that in my 20s in Seattle, during the grunge era, I went out to where the people were and I mingled and I mixed. And yeah, and again, this is anecdotal. That didn't work out that well. But I do the same thing out here in Second Life and in OpenSim, and I've gotten greater results. So, real world 0, virtual world 3, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you can be isolated and in real life too, but It's I think actually you just pointed out what the affordance is of well actual virtual worlds rather than say the hypergrid or even Second Life is the um it's a kind of golden age in a way in that it's not because it's not there yet, because we're not photographic holograms, because we don't make genuine eye contacts like we might make. If you're on a video call on the phone and you don't know somebody well, that you find them shifting their eyes away, like they don't want to make full eye contact, whereas in a real environment they have to. And
Yeah,
you
we're
know,
getting past
you
the we're making up for the void that emoticons were meant to fill, which
yeah.
was, no, I'm just kidding.
But
With
if I
virtual worlds, we'll reach the point where we have, I think it's called facial haptics, I'm not sure, but
yeah.
basically you'll have the facial expression, you'll look at someone and go, oh, okay, they're kidding, oh, they're mad, and not tell me, oh boy, just that whole thing, right?
But they have the beginnings of that in both science space and hyperlazy, in fact, which is
Yeah.
very. It actually works really well because it tells you so much more about the person when you see the individual muscles of their face moving as well as their eyes. But um, it's I think what's missing in some of these worlds when is actually what makes it the golden age in a way. Like I mean, if I walk in a room in the real world, it's very hard not to react to what's around you. And if somebody comes up to you and starts pestering you with silly questions, they're a bit thick or something, it's very hard to walk away. But you can do that a lot easier without being offensive in virtuality, even if you have to use the excuse of crashing or something. And it's the
Well,
same
you can
with
also just mute people too. It's like,
yeah,
they think that they're talking to you, but you just see like the great
yeah.
person or whatever.
And
For
they talk
me,
about
for me, the thing of it is, and I kind of want to, if you will forgive my bringing this back, it's a question of participatory versus passive. And that goes, it's kind of like, I did OpenSim to celebrate the interactive thing, the fact that you can come out here and you do something, you are a part of this, your efforts, your creativity, instead of just simply like, okay, I'm going to go to this thing over here. I'm going to go to an exhibit in Sansar, someone else made, has nothing to do with me. I'm going to, boop, 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 mess around. With Avatar Fest, you set up an exhibit and you're going to meet other people who have also set up exhibits, and you are actually having a real shared experience as opposed to a shared exhibit,
Yeah.
So to me, it's the active versus passive, it's participatory. I don't really see, at least the ones that I'm aware of, maybe science space is different. I actually have a pretty high opinion of science space, but I don't really go over there. But to the best of my knowledge, you aren't doing the building, you aren't doing the creating over there like you are here. And that you don't have a voice, you don't have an expression, you aren't saying your thing. I mean, you can say that, well, you say something by your choice of purchases. That's, no, yeah, maybe, kind of, sort of, but more so, you say something more so by what you build. Even if you build crummy stuff, I'm the crummiest builder out there, but I still build, and the reason why
Not
is
true.
because it's my expression.
Sure, unless you to put your first stroke on paper, you'll never become an artist.
Exactly,
start
writers write,
somewhere.
builders
Yeah.
build. Exactly right.
I've got the crummiest
Yeah.
avatar out there, but I made it.
Yeah, quite. Hey,
Exactly right.
Right.
I mean, that's just a square box. It's called a prim, but I've done it. I dropped it. Oh, I can. I mean, everything I know in here, I must admit, I did learn more or less in Second Life. I didn't know, I was in there for months
Yeah,
before I
well,
realized
it goes.
I could do. I could
You
do a
end up
prim.
picking up GIMP, Photoshop. I
Yeah.
wound up finding Filter Forge on sale and messing around with textures. OpenSim, Second Life, and my roommate got me into Blender in a very teeny tiny way. So yeah, it does all lead to a larger world of skill learning. Whereas, and I'm a little bit curmudgeonly on this, I guess, but you go to Sansar and see someone else's thing, where does that lead you to? Nowhere, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, I mean, I must have been in Second Life quite a while, but I enjoyed flying at first, but I never do it now. It's boring. It's more fun to go up and down the hills and stuff like that. You pick it up and then it becomes a very sort of social thing. But I've been maybe in there ages before I discovered I could actually drop a prim and texture and stuff. And I actually used to, my professionally, I'm a designer way back when. I used to teach Photoshop. But of course, that wasn't 3D. Anything 2D, I'm actually very comfortable with. But I never I never really understood the basics or had learnt the basics of the 3 axes of 3D, basically, for design.
Yeah, I got
So
introduced to Poser about like 15 years ago, but I'm coming into this pretty much raw, like untrained. I've taken a photography class on composition, and I took that actually about the same time that I was starting to build. I had already like put out an OR file on OpenSim Creations before that. So, I being out here has inspired me to kind of like learn all the stuff, from pretty much scratch.
I think
Which is why my builds are crap.
But no, I actually genuinely believe that's the way. I mentioned I used to teach Photoshop, but I never formally trained in it. I did know what I was doing in the real world before digital, so I was able to make the transition from the metaphors of the real world, like masking techniques, and into the way they're employed in the software. But I just I would sit there, I would get on a bus or a train or something and take that huge bloody manual and just read it and then put it, try and remember things, and then I would just fiddle around with the software until I knew it inside out. And I don't think there's anything where I don't think there's any software I know where I, trained. I just read the manual so I knew what everything did, fiddled with the interface so I knew what everything did, and then
Thank God for Google. That's my story,
plowed away with it until I figured I knew everything.
Yeah, but to come back to OpenSim, I think that's the beauty of OpenSim as well, because you can just, you have your viewer, and when you first started, I know how it was for me, because I did start in OpenSim. I didn't start in Second Life with all the big manuals and with all the handbooks and whatever else. I downloaded the viewer. I started fiddling. End of story, basically. And it's learning by doing. And I think that's one of the great beauties about OpenSim is if you're not afraid of the interface, in this case, the viewer, you can go pretty far by just fiddling around.
Yeah, well, even now I discover I can mangle prims in ways I didn't actually know was possible. Sometimes I find out by accident. I think, oh, that's fun.
There's always places like the Lost Gardens of Apollo for ideas. It's like, okay, you go over there and you look at, wow, this is all prims, and wow, how the heck did you do that? And then you go home and you try it out yourself, and you make it, you don't make it, but it's still, inspirational.
Indeed, yeah. And I'd have to cite that as one of the main things about the hypergrid and OpenSim itself. Really, there is no other platform that matches that. Sciencebase, by the way, does have in-world building tools now, but they're a subset of Unity. That it just means that users can do elementary things like build elementary things.
It's kind of ancillary to the culture. It's like added on, bolted on. It's not with Second Life. I think that even now, in the age of Maitreya and the mesh bodies and Catwa and blah blah, it's still a core idea of Second Life that you can come in and make stuff, even if practically speaking, a lot of people don't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just self-contained, isn't it? Yeah, no, well, I certainly think that is, bearing in mind we obviously have a clear difference between the demographic of something like Second Life and OpenSim.
Absolutely.
maybe I'm talking about both of them. I mean, it seems to me that even if things don't go whiz bang and we get a new viewer and lots of new things we can do, it seems to me that it can sustain itself. Both platforms, in fact, can sustain themselves at the level they are now because they do have, for the foreseeable future, an advantage over almost any of these new platforms, which
Well,
always seem to have, they always give up
they've got the
something.
Black Dragon viewer and we've got far regions. So, there you go. It's kind of a trade-off.
It's a shame. It's a shame Black Dragon doesn't work for OpenSim. I downloaded a new one.
Absolutely.
I got the new one the other day because of, obviously, for filmmaking, it's the best viewer around, machinima and stuff. Yeah, that's true. Now where were I'm losing track of where we are. Let's go back specifically to OpenSim because it's been. Oh,
Sure.
James, you did mention that we've got a couple of comments from the TV audience. Somebody says High Fidelity has a mobile client,
Cool.
which I think is an Android client, and I don't know how fully empowered it is. I don't think they have an iOS one. And somebody else had said, OpenSim live comment on YouTube. Personal opinion, the pioneers are coming back. And there is a schism
Yeah.
between the people who want to use OpenSim for what was intended. I'm not sure exactly what it was intended for, but never. And those who want it to be the Wild West or an SL clone.
Yeah, there's no authoritative. Someone comes up to me and I don't care if they're pro-commercial, anti-commercial. No one can come up to me who, unless they're like freaking Adam Frisbee or something and tell me that OpenSim is definitively intended to be blonde and be like, well, you're full of it, because there isn't one intended thing. It was intended to be a virtual world server platform it's actually supposed to be multi-protocol. They have, in theory, you could bolt on different protocols to the server, but no one's ever developed anything but an SL compatible one.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, OpenSim got reverse engineered, and I know that from Greybeard, who knew the original inventor of OpenSim personally. When OpenSim started, it wasn't even called OpenSim. The first OpenSim world was called TribalNet. And it was it was invented actually to become to be developed and to be developed into a 3D internet.
OpenSim pretty much comes from libOML, which was originally called lib Second Life, which was a reverse engineered library of Second Life calls. So I don't agree with Greybeard on that, and the history is pretty well documented. But my point being that if someone comes up and tells me, well, the point of OpenSim is meant to be a commercial paradise, I'm going to go, nah, you're full of it. And if someone comes up to me and says, OpenSim is meant to be free only with no commercial anything, I'm going to go, yeah, you're full of it. I think it's, it's basically meant to be a platform that can be anything. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
I mean, it turns out to be, the very first intention when they did it was to create a 3D internet. But something, there were different people during the history who came and brought their own ideas into it, and now it can pretty much be anything.
Yeah.
I do seem to remember the name Tribal from going back, it's been about 12.
I thought they were a hosting company, but I don't really remember.
But so I tend to look to, what is great is people like Adam Frisbee are actually still, well, they're said to be founders what OpenSim is now, but they're still as interested in this as they are in running their new platforms like SciSpace. And even Philip Rosedale, when I spent the other day, he was asking, "Am I still
Well,
in
they go away and
He
then they
said,
come
"Am I?"
back. You notice?
Yeah, well, he was just saying, I've been in Second Life a bit recently, and he asked me, "Are you still in Second Life?" And I said, "No." I keep thinking, what's wrong with Fidelity if he's back in Second Life? But that go figure.
Another
But
comment. OpenSim Life commented on YouTube, just to clarify, by intended, it was meant not intended to be one or the other. So,
I agree
yes,
with that.
just tracking.
yeah. I mean, that is to be said. The hypergrid, you can, you can teleport to Wall Street, or you can teleport to a Greek island.
Absolutely, or a hippie commune.
Yeah, exactly. All points in between. It's just a metaphor for traveling. And actually, although I'm complaining about how awkward passport control is getting, I mean, if we are traveling in the real world, we have to cope with passports, and if we're going to America, we've got to spend about a
Oh
year
dear
filling
God,
in
yeah,
stuff.
that is just.
That's just not possible. You give up trying.
Yeah, I'm scared they won't let me back in.
Yeah, no. So it is very, we do have to do it in a real way. It's just, I suppose it's not so much things being free or things not being commercial. It's the concept of, in these worlds, feeling you have an individual freedom, and everything that comes along that seems to be a snag in that sense of freedom is seen as bad by a lot of people. If you know if there's certain controls in place in a grid you go to, some people just don't like it. I mean, you go to a role-playing grid, and the first thing that happens is you go to the landing region. You're not allowed to go to anywhere else until you adopt the role-play costume. So they give you a free costume. You've got to put it on before you can enter the role play thing. And I'm like that. I'll go to something like that, and I'll immediately think, oh, this is too much hassle. I'm going away. I don't want to change my costume just to go and see a Roman building or something. Actually, in Second Life, my avatar's a pussycat, and that can go anywhere. One of the beauties of
I've got one of those, Ginger.
yeah. Yeah, a ginger. I forget what it's called, but I mean, it goes on spaceships. It goes to historical builds. It goes to the far future. It trottles around the landscapes. It's just at home in the city. It can go anywhere, and nobody's bothered. No dress code.
Yeah, I actually kind of use it for I'll be with my friends. They'll start arguing about whatever. I turn to a cat. It's like, I don't even want to. Don't drag me into your whatever.
I know.
I'm just gonna go find a mouse.
Also, it's a little mesh one. I don't know what yours is, but this actually It goes.
Oh, mine's all I think sculpty.
Yeah, it goes really fast for one thing, and also being the size of a cat, it's not much bigger than my shoe, and there's drawbacks. You do get stepped on all the while, but you can wander around places and people can't see you. They maybe know your name tag is there somewhere, but they can't see you. And time will go by, and then suddenly somebody will look down to their foot and they'll see me there and say, "Oh, I don't know." It's one
of these days I'm going to have to go into one of our meetings at the CDS as a cat and just see what people think. Although we've got one of our representative assembly members named Tan, who has a lot of different interesting avatars he comes in as.
Yeah, I'm notorious for not changing my costumes. So in Second Life, the cat's the cat, and that's that. In here, it's a bit different. Okay, moving back to say we always end up talking about other places other than OpenSim and the hypergrid on this show. Actually, it says when it goes on for a while. But coming back to our main focus, which is of course the hypergrid. As you said, it's time to pass the torch and make room for something else. Now, I think I feel a bit like that myself. I want to, see.
Well, I just feel like
programs and things.
There's different things going on. you've got newer grids. In fact, I want to call out to OpenSim.live, who is, they're doing a
Bill,
lot of great stuff.
that's Bill
They're
Wright.
turned into, and they've turned into a powerhouse, as has HG Love. They are just really great, very creative communities. And I'm sucking up the oxygen. I don't even know what's going on with a lot of the stuff out there. I mean, I know about them, obviously, and I know about some of the other, yuck stuff, but that I hear about on, OpenSim World. But, I think that there's people and groups who are doing things that once, next year comes around, next fall comes around, they're going to go, well, we want to do something to represent our users. We want our users to come in and, show off what they're doing, and they will come up with their own version of Avatar Fest, I think.
I can easily see. We mentioned Hypergo Safari earlier.
Just don't call it that.
What?
Well, whatever they come up with, just don't call it Avatar Fest.
Yeah.
Oh,
no. Yeah, that's
sorry.
that's
yours. That's yours.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. We're keeping that, in perpetuity, but
yeah.
No,
I was
whatever.
I was just thinking of the inevitable because I think of Hypergo Safari, for example, that Cersei so wonderfully did over the years, and I remember there was a point where Hypergo Safari was becoming quite well known. More and more people were coming to every one, although it varied. But suddenly I started seeing, mostly in Google Plus, I guess, posts from grids saying, join us for Grid Safari or something else Safari or something. They were clearly pitching the Hypergo Safari audience, but in fact, what they were doing, they were creating safaris within their own grids. So it was a way of promoting their own grid. It wasn't
instead promoting the hypergrid and getting people actually going around. They're just trying to get people to look around their own places. Yeah,
and ideas spread. So I can easily see somebody taking on the mantle
and
of something like Avatar Fest, but then you'd realise that everybody at it was part of the same large grid, for example, which wouldn't really be quite the same thing, I'm afraid.
Well, I mean, it depends. They call it, like, for instance, OS Grid Fest. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that. If they're showing off non-commercial stuff, then God bless them.
Yeah, I think actually the non-commercial thing is probably the thing that.
Yeah, the user focused and non-commercial in my mind.
Yeah, a kind of, hey guys, what are you doing? Not what are you selling? What are you doing?
Aaron put it great. Show and tell.
Yeah, but as long as they're not called it Avatar Fest,
right.
I don't care what they do anyway.
Yeah,
they can commercialize whatever they want as long as they don't use the name.
I'm going to go back to the issue. Danger of repeating ourselves a bit here. Of
okay.
It's something I was going to raise earlier, but I forgot. I'm reflecting here on the World Wide Web, actually. The way that over the years the platform of the World Wide Web, which was about sharing information and archiving stuff and fundamental global communication. Some people called it a blueprint for true democracy and things. You can have voting on it, that's 1-to-1 and participation, but it never panned out that way. It has turned into television. The movie companies, the TV
that's the whole internet. I mean, what happened to FTP or chat or
IRC?
IRC became Discord, for God's sake.
Yeah, all these things are there still, but the point is, ISPs get merged and taken over and become bigger and bigger, and then they make deals with the media corporations that are buying up and bigger and bigger.
Well, consolidation
a big danger of monopolization. Rising, and you suddenly find that it's not that I can't go on the web and go to an old IRC channel or find an old chat room somewhere if I really dig for it and want it, but it's the fact that the whole standards, the menu system, even down to our operating systems, are no longer designed for us to go and find that stuff easily. They want to send us to the Netflixes. They want us to send us to the YouTubes. Everything is being geared to prioritize traffic to these huge corporations that are becoming
Well, yeah, I
monopolies.
was
And
actually
the
reading about
worst,
this on. I was reading about this on Hacker News, Y Combinator, I think it's pronounced. But
mm,
I was reading in the comments section there, and it's someone said something interesting, which was it's not that these you can put up your own web page, you can put up your own IRC server, you can put up whatever. It's just that doing so is a fool's errand because everyone's going to go to Facebook, everyone's
yeah,
going to go to Netflix, so doing it yourself is, used to be a kind of, you know, rewarding thing to do. Now it's just kind of dumb because no one's
yeah.
going to care.
It depends what you're doing. I mean, if you don't want something to be high profile, it may be worth doing it in a backwater and then
Yeah, but you're not going to
selectively,
get users is the point. I mean, if you
yeah,
want to do something
exactly.
for 5 of your friends, well, that's cool, but it's not relevant the way that it was 10 years ago was their point.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I think the point I was making, but I mean, what is out there, just because ILC is still out there, it's not a good. It's not to say it's still, as you say, you've got things like Discord that can do the job a whole lot better. Um, it's so things move on, but I mean, talking of virtual worlds, the biggest thing I think I tweeted a please no or something to an article recently, and it was talking about development with Facebook Spaces and their avatars. And remember, they own Oculus too.
Yeah.
I mean, I try and avoid Facebook at all costs. It's insidious. I actually post articles to it if arts and music stuff, but usually the things I send to Facebook are all the anti-Facebook
Yeah,
articles.
that's
I
a
can,
whole show in and of
I think,
itself.
I think it's funny,
Yeah.
posting bad Facebook to Facebook, but it's a different audience who follow me there. I think.
Sure.
Well, I don't know. I don't really care, but I really, seeing the way Facebook work and how it's not they're ubiquitous, but they're also insidious. They got their spider, strands in
Well, I
everywhere,
mean, you
and
you look up a page
the
on
thought,
the thing of it is that you look up a page on, let's say you see something on TV about the Brazilian centipede. So you go, oh, well, that's curious. I want to read more. So you Wikipedia Brazilian centipede. And
yeah,
then all of a sudden you're like getting ads on Amazon for like insect killer, and you're
yeah,
getting ads on Facebook for what the heck ever. Um,
yeah,
it's all tied together in a really increasingly creepy and dystopian, and I
I
mean literally dystopian way.
yeah, I just had a bicker with eBay. I mean, I bought a movie, right, which I found by looking up the author who the movie was an adaptation of, right? And I got the movie because I wanted the movie. Amazon, not sorry, not Amazon, eBay are emailing me maybe 12 times a day with suggestions of things I want, and they never seem to be based on what I bought. It all seems to be based on links in the search system. So they're trying to sell me books by this author whose one novel got adapted into a film. They don't seem to click that I just wanted to look up a film. They just now they seem to think, that I want to buy every book by this goddamn author. His
Well, if
name
they're
might be
getting it
Kevin.
wrong, that's actually a good thing. I'm more creeped out when
Yeah,
they get it right on like a fourth party site that is completely unrelated to anything that I've been doing that day. That's what creeps me out.
yeah, that would me too. Yeah, this is more of a case of spamming with irrelevant material. Yeah, I don't know, but the reason I mentioned that is that whenever I go on the web, not me personally, because I just do things my old-fashioned way,
Sure.
but and I'm very good at picking and choosing services that are useful to me and not using ones that aren't or getting too much out of me from what I'm getting. But I'm very aware that for some average person who buys a new computer, a bit of Mac or Windows or whatever, you know,
Or their
uh,
phone,
yeah, a lot of
Android phone. I mean,
being
I don't know about
online.
Apple, but Google sends like a metric ton of stuff back
Yeah,
to Google. So there you go.
yeah. But the thing is that the moment you buy the thing, and it sets up. Um, Everything is geared to a consumer experience. So I
Sure.
begin to feel like, well, it's not television or sometimes YouTube
Well, your television
things
sends
like,
stuff back too. If you've got one of the newer
yeah,
Samsungs,
yeah,
That's
yeah, I've
they're
got,
listening by default. And I
oh,
don't have
yeah,
one. I don't know, but I've been told that you can't turn that off, which is really
yeah,
insanely creepy. It's just insane. Period.
yeah, I have a smart one, but it's, I, as a rule, never buy LG or Samsung. And that's been a rule for about 10 years now.
Yeah, I'm not going to buy a
Partly
smart
because
TV. That's just it.
their yeah, their products actually never last. They
Sure.
cost nearly as much as the competition, but they don't last. I mean, they make things that cost quite a lot and break down after 18 months. And I'm sure it's built in because that's when the warranty runs out. But aside from that, I mean, I've had bad problems with Samsung devices. Nothing to do with spying, but just useless breakdowns and catching fire and
Yeah,
all
I've
sorts
got
of
an
things.
old Samsung tablet, which is like kind of annoying me because it's not upgradable. So I'm going to have to like plop down money for a new one when it should still be working. So that's kind of
Yeah.
like that's got me peeved a bit.
Yeah, you want to buy something that's an investment, not something that's
Exactly.
a consumer toy. It's bad enough that the tablet shows consumer items,
Yep.
but the tablet itself is a consumer item.
Yeah, but nowadays, especially in the mobile market, they
Mm.
create those things with a lifespan, and
Yes.
it's
Yeah,
a lifespan built in. So
Yeah.
you buy something for a period of XYZ, and it's not you buy it until it actually doesn't work anymore,
You
and
buy
yeah,
it
that's what I
until it
find
expires, basically. It's like a library book that you
precisely.
pay a couple $100 for.
well,
Yeah, but it's too fucking expensive, for
Yes.
me. I mean, it's
Yeah.
well,
I've got nothing better.
Aaron, you were in Germany, aren't you?
Yeah,
And right, I mean, I remember, but you got handcrafted stuff in Britain too. But when I was young, and I wanted a hi-fi that would last, or stuff like that, it was always a German mate we went to, because they built to last. They
they
built
did.
properly. They built to last, and you knew it was a bit more expensive than the one made by some British high street store or something, but you knew it would last, and
Yeah, but that has changed as well because the global competition is just too big.
uh,
To have something that actually lasts, you have to sort of do it differently than the rest of the world, and uh, it that would mean it would be significantly more expensive, and people just
yeah.
don't want to pay that kind of money anymore. And so I while I still take pride in German products, I don't think it is what it used to be.
Yeah. I mean, it's like people who, they'd rather have 3 junk meal foods a day than have
Well, if it's free, that's
one,
fine. Yeah, sure. I don't mind
one
if I have to
hopeful
replace
meal.
something free every 6 months. Fine, but you
Oh,
want
yeah.
me to pay like $300 for something I'm going to have to replace in 4 years? Nah, the heck with that.
Yeah. Yeah, you
No,
can't really complain when the free
I
stuff
think it's
breaks down.
ridiculous that the mobile phone companies actually can say, "Oh no, you can't upgrade that anymore." Which is, for the most part, is political reason, and is, from a hardware point of view, it's not that it couldn't support that newer system anymore.
No, it's all economics. I agree.
So that's what I as a consumer think, that sucks.
And it
And
also
Yeah,
leaves you vulnerable. I mean, I would not do any kind of online banking on my tablet. I wouldn't put
no,
anything that basically when I turn on my tablet, I assume that someone can hack into it and may very well do so, and that anything I have on there is pretty much, in public domain, put it up in my window for all that mattered, which is just BS in my mind.
but I mean, quite frankly, if you log into a workstation on desktop, you potentially face the same dangers. I think my
Not
worry
quite,
is
because
when
you
I
can
mentioned.
upgrade. You can upgrade and add security patches to your desktop. You can put in
That's true.
another operating system for the moment if you aren't
You don't
happy
like
with
the
Windows.
Exactly.
The
Oh
tablet,
yeah.
you're stuck with that version of Android. You can't upgrade to a more secure one later on down the road. At least I
Right.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
At least with Samsung. So yeah.
Yeah. And even the Apple. I mean, the iPad is very secure and it's best option going. Meddle with it. You know, you are reliant on what the upgrades Apple gives you. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, but I was thinking in terms of when, of course, I ended up hijacking us and sending us to the web there. But I see what's happened to the web, and I see that from an average point of view, a lot more of the web now is driven by consumption than interaction and you know, exploration. You know, people would rather watch something streamed on the web than read an extensive article on the web.
True.
And you know, they interact using Skype and things like that a bit, but generally speaking, it's the people always don't go for the easy option. And a lot of people, you know, if they're working all day or something, and they come, and the last thing they want to do, you know, is online, you know, exercising their brain. They would much prefer to watch television because it's very passive, and there's a lot on delivered via the web now that is equally passive. And you know, I suppose the crossover
I
point I
think that's
worry about.
cultural.
I
I'm
think
sorry
that
to interrupt you, but I
yeah.
think a lot of that is cultural. When I was growing up, and again, I'm going to lapse into like old hand mode. Um, the Ramones went around, and they would be playing their shows, and they talk to people afterwards, and they'd be
I
like,
love
"You're so
I,
awesome," and they would be saying, "Hey, go out and do this," while we
gabba
don't
gabba
play. Well,
gabba
no, yeah,
gabba gabba
you don't know how
hey.
to play. Well, it doesn't matter if you know how to play. Get out there, and they would do that, and that was in the '80s. People would put out
I
their own record labels.
yeah.
It was active. It was, you went out and did the stuff. When I was 23, I self-published my own book. Just went to Xerox, wrote, typed up a bunch of crap, went out to the Xerox, dropped it off at the coffee stations, or coffee shops. Nowadays the sentiment, the mindset is, well, you don't go out and form a band and all this. You sit and watch whoever's on Big Brother or American Idol or whatever, and then they tell you who to like. So, and again, this may be just a messed up perspective based on my age, but it seems like things have become more passive and more, you take in things, you don't necessarily participate, which is another motivation on my part for my wanting to do Avatar Fest the way that we've done Avatar Fest, participatory.
Mal, are you there? I'm not hearing you, Mal.
Oh, sorry, button was pressed.
Okay, all right. Fair enough.
Oh, these things happen.
Let him
Oh,
off. It's like he had enough of that. It's like, okay, hands
no,
gone off the
I,
rails. I'm out. That does it for me.
no, I mean when it comes to culture and things, I was drifting off on the thread of back in the underground press of the '60s and through to the
Well, yeah, it all goes back to that. I agree.
all the Xerox stuff, punk stuff of the
Mm-hmm.
'80s and
Absolutely.
all that. And always here culturally, things lots of things become integrated, and the fact they're
Well, yeah,
unusual and
but
different,
my point, the main
gets
point I
lost.
was making is that it used to be more active
Yeah,
in the '60s, in the '70s, in the '80s, and even I guess the '90s. I stopped paying attention then, but there was the sense of you can participate in this, and if they try to shut you out, you just push your way in. But
yeah.
this is what people do. Nowadays it seems like it's more passive. Publishing is for professionals only, even if there's self-publishing. Music is
Yeah.
for studied professionals only. Songwriting requires like 8 people, most of whom have degrees. It's like, it's not as open to anyone at all. It's the way that it used to be. That's my perception, at least. And
Oh, I think
I-
it's still open. I think that just people don't do it anymore.
well, yeah, the
I-
sensibilities changed is what I'm saying. The sensibility is a more passive one.
Yeah.
I sometimes
But
see some old music and stuff, 60s, 70s, wherever, on YouTube clips, and I read the comments, and it's clear that there are lots of younger people watching these things. Other people say, yeah, they just don't do it like this anymore. It's all manufactured. Bring back all this, hey, you can tell these are real people, and blah blah blah.
Yeah, don't
Yeah,
bring it
someone
on.
should go on there and say, okay, well, if you like this, go do it.
Yeah.
You're 17 and like your grandfather's music. Awesome. Go find other 17-year-olds and form a freaking band. That's my
I think
take on that.
I think it sort of still happens. But I don't know about the actual innovation of music itself, but it seems like every kid in every
Well, there's still
town,
bands around, but I mean the
potentially
larger
in a band.
culture.
Yeah,
And there's
yeah.
definitely
So
still bands around.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are still bands that actually we see some of them in here and in Second Life. Troubadours who actually do
Absolutely.
record albums and things, and they sell them at their gigs, even their virtual gigs. But there is it's a very unusual circumstance now where somebody gets well enough known to transcend that self-publishing, self-recording thing. Everybody wants the big record company deal, or they want to be part of the corporation that will
And I think a lot of the
package
audience
them.
kind of like, if you aren't from Warner Brothers or whoever, they, as a performer, you're looked at kind of askew,
Well, now coming back to our core thing, I hadn't actually quite finished what I was getting at when you.
Okay.
I was coming along with the idea the web has become very consumer, but I sort of think of it like the way. I look at things like our media in the 60s and 70s and things, and stuff I've witnessed down the road since, and the way it is now, and I think, oh, there's just nothing like that. But then you also realise that I'm watching bands on stage at the moment that are mega performances, whereas back in the 70s even. They would have been the stuff they're doing now. They would have been saying sell out, no innovation, whatever. So things sort of change there, and the general sort of thing is the merging. It seems like a lot of things that I always thought were, I always seem to get it wrong. I think, oh, this is pioneering, and this is going to be great. And come the 90s, the web comes along, and I think of stuff like that. Come the turn of the century, I'm moving into things like virtual worlds and thinking how this is going to be great. You think and sometimes I turn around and say, I think I should have learned my lesson by now, that nothing is going to pan out quite the way it was meant to. And I think that's happened to very much the web, which is now very much a consumer-facing product, even though, of course, it is still greatly interactive if you go to the right places. But I also wonder if our virtual worlds are going to, that have started out with such optimism and, the sense of empowerment we feel. I keep
I think
wondering
that's still there.
yeah, I think it's still there, but I keep wondering if down the line it's somehow going to get packaged and sort of somehow that empowerment is going to go away. And I think, this is where I was leading back again, is the thing that is, as far as living in and using virtual worlds is concerned, I still feel more empowered in OpenSim and on the hypergrid than in any other option. Even though there are a lot of options out there now, I personally feel I'm empowered, and I think you do, Han, too, from the
Oh,
sound of it.
absolutely.
I'm actually very keen on looking at what science, space, high fidelity, and well, there's two really. are doing. Dragster's trying to get me to go into Sansol, and so I never get it around to tackle Sansol. But um, you know, I tell them all, OpenSim is my home, or rather, the hypergrid is my home. My desktop world, is my actual home, and it goes in and out from there. And I still feel I'm empowered, and I don't think any other of the platforms that I'm quite kind of looking at and things like that do make me feel empowered. They're kind of what you might call nice places to visit, but
Well, like I said, I think of them as being passive.
they're not somewhere you want to live.
Right, right. I agree with what you're saying pretty much exactly. I might put it slightly different, but your overall point, yes, I agree. And I think Sansar is probably the perfect example of that in my mind. It's you log into a world, a Sansar world, and you experience what they tell you to experience. When I tried it, there wasn't a heck of a lot of interactivity. You just kind of go. It's like going to a museum, and museums are awesome. Museums provide a valuable service. You would not want to live in a museum, though.
Quite,
So yeah.
They're like, I suppose it's virtuality, as online destinations, but they are.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, they're exhibits, and they're great for what they are.
Yeah, or it's like going on a holiday and taking a cruise ship and never getting off and learning the locals. It's
Or being stuck in your cabin. Yeah.
yeah, it's what's the word I'm trying for? Curated,
Very,
curated
yeah.
experience rather than your experience. It's sort of, we packaged it up just so you like it.
No sharp edges. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Smooth at the corners. Okay, James, it sounds like there's a few people watching. Have we got any comments in the old broadcast?
No more comments. Nothing more. So we've had viewers come and go. So.
Oh dear. One of those days.
Oh God, Hans going on one of those crazy rants again. Geez, I'm out of here. I know at least one person did that.
Yeah.
Jumping in and out. Yeah. Oh, it's like that world. What's that world we used to call the yo-yo? Forgotten what it was called now.
Oh, Avi World.
That was
Oh
it.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Less said, better.
Good analogy, though. Yo-yos, Right. Okay. I think we're getting pretty much to the end of it. Well, it sounds like we could chat for ages. Okay. It's the last Avatar Fest, obviously.
Right.
And you're working in Second Life with I must admit,
with the Confederation of Democratic Simulators.
I do know of them because there's a kind of political democracy thing going on there.
Well, it's user run.
Yeah.
Users, you aren't a client. It's not a rental. You become a citizen of the estate, and by being a citizen, you have the right to run in the government. And what that means is that you have the right to potentially influence the direction of how the estate is run. You have the power to influence policies, influence builds, designs, and all that. I think it's very unique. I don't know of any other estate in Second Life which is run that way. I happen to be having the privilege of being the chancellor, which is pretty much the head EM in a sense.
You had all the money.
No, actually, don't. I wish. I'd be in Mexico or something. No.
In Britain,
they actually limit my funds. They're like, oh God, Han will spend it on like catnip. So yeah, you get 10 lindens and that's that,
No, in Britain, if you're the chancellor, it means you run the bank. Although, of course, in Germany, if you're chancellor, you're like president, aren't you?
I think it's modeled more on, as I said, the CDS is derived from the New Altenburg project, which had a schism in 2006 when two of the founders went off and founded Port New Altenburg. But basically, long story short, we started off as a Bavarian style region modeled after Rothenburg. So yeah, long story there. I won't go into all of it, but yeah, the chancellor is probably more modeled after the German meaning of chancellor than the English one.
My actual home, interestingly, in Second Life, I think it's in Mangione, which Tara has a lot of the land. But um, although I'm never there when I am, technically I'm still part of the Chilbo region, the Chilbo Community Building Project, which again has that long history. It's very American
Right.
to me, but the idea was it's built up like a town, and everybody contributes. The whole idea is to make it seamless, not not patches with great big walls around them and everything else. And
Yeah,
it's
we're a
quite nice.
similar idea,
Yeah, we had a town
except that
hall and
our
stuff.
management is basically user based, kind of, all the users are eligible to have a say in what's going on with the government potentially.
Yeah.
And if you'll forgive my plugging, anyone that wants to read about us can go to cdsdemocracy.org and read about our history and read about our goals.
Okay. That was say that again slowly so people can get it again if they want it. It's Confederation CDS democracy. No. Start again.
cdsdemocracy.org.
Oh, yeah, right. That's what I thought it was.
And then, of
Okay.
course, for our event, for Aaron and I's event, that's avatarfest.net, which will link you to the G Plus group. Most of the conversation and announcements will go on in the G Plus group, but it's easier to type avatarfest.net. So that's probably what you would want to do.
Right. And of course, you are in our Hypergrid Discord channel, so you've no doubt be putting stuff there too.
Oh, absolutely. I'm all over Discord in different places.
Yeah, I've got now so many Discord channels I've been invited to.
Oh, yikes. I got to catch up then.
They all scroll under the floor. I keep trying to move the important ones back to the top. I used to have about 2, and that was it. But now it seems everybody under the sun has decided.
That answers my question, because I started my own channel. I think you get one by default, and I started one for the CDS. And when I started one for the CDS, they're like, you already have a channel. Do you really need another channel? Yes, I need another channel. Well, apparently I can have like a lot more channels, so that's good to know.
Yeah, as many as you want. Yeah, the trouble is, it's a bit hard to manage when you've got too many, because you've got. I've got the overlay working on the game here and on the studio here, and it keeps giving me an active scrolling list of messages on Discord. But of course, when you've got about 20 channels, you can't actually tell
and
which
friends.
message.
I mean, messages from friends, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, you just can't tell which place the messages are coming from. It's like overload, but it's got great benefits too. Right, Erin, anything else you want to say, Erin? You've been a bit quieter than most of us. I guess
Well, you
you've
guys been
faced it.
talking a lot.
Yeah, you've got 2 gossiping, over accelerated mouthpieces beside you. Drowning you out, I'm afraid.
No, that's fine.
Hmm. Is there anything else you're up to apart from the Avatar Fest, of course?
No, not
Of
really.
interest?
Not really.
Ah,
I'm still
okay.
working on Hogwarts, of course, but that's sort of a never-ending story.
Yeah, exactly. They shouldn't call it Harry Potter. They should call it a never-ending story. Now, where have I heard that name before? Right. There's a hell of a lot of Hogwarts on OpenSim on the
Yeah.
hypergrid.
Well, it's a fascinating world you can do a lot with,
Yeah. I've
multiple aspects to it.
I've seen everything from highly detailed, almost sculpted builds, which very sparse textures and things, just determined to get the architecture right, to other ones that are pure evocation of atmosphere and aren't quite so bothered about the architectural bits. So it's been approached by the same subject has been approached from quite a lot of different ways out here.
Yeah,
Actually.
I can't mesh for shit, so I'm still doing everything more or less by prims. but we're a bit obsessed with getting it right.
You can actually, I've had limited success with this, but I think it's just because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Um, you can, if you're in Firestorm, I think you can actually do some things with prims and then export them as an OAR and bring them back in as a one prim mesh.
Yeah, not as such. You need to actually export it as DAE, import it in Blender, and then you have to join it because they're different meshes. And if you just export it and re-import it, you still have different meshes. So that's not one object.
Okay.
You know, it's still going to be the
I
same
do something
file.
similar, but I go into Second Life and I use I think it's called Mesh Generator, which is a commercial product for that because the viewer tools just don't work for me. They, for various reasons, I don't get the land impact savings I do from Mesh Generator.
Does if you import something and use Mesh Generator on it, can you, under Second Life's rules, can you then export it? Does it count as wholly your own and can be exported onto a hard disk?
I have no idea about their rules. If they have any rules about. Okay, well, first off, let me explain the process. The process is you create the prims, then you put a script into the root prim that interacts with an object from the mesh generator object. You click on the object that you've built and it pops up a dialog asking you, do you want to do this? You click yes. It sends whatever information to a web server, which is third party. And then that web server creates a Collada file and then sends you a download link to the Collada file. So, you know.
So you get a DAE file at the end of the day, and it's actually sent to you out of world.
And as far as it goes, as long as your textures are your own, your sculpts are your own, you've made your own sculpts, made your own prims, made your own textures, you're, to the best of my knowledge, perfectly allowed to export from Second Life. In fact, Firestorm has the OXP format, which is actually pretty awesome for building in Second Life and then like restoring to last location in OpenSim. I do that a lot.
Do they, when they send you the DAE, do they send it you in world in Second Life or as
no? They send it.
On the
they
web?
They send you a link. They type a link that you click on, and then that link is loaded in your web browser, and then you download it to your downloads folder or whatever.
Yeah, so once you've got a DAE, you can upload it into OpenSim or Second Life.
I do all the time.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's worth. It's probably worth getting to Second Life for to do that.
I think that might be one of the few things that I get from it. And I need to mention that works in the beta grid too. So you don't necessarily, if you don't want to go to the main grid for whatever reason, beta grid's where you go.
Good point. Yeah, I remember I went to beta grid once. Mind you, I remember going to
I choose to do it via Blender.
Which is actually the better way if you can do it.
But it's really easy because you just import it, and then you join the object, and you give it a new center, and then you export as Collada, and that's basically it. But you have to join the object.
Interesting. I've got so many little tools that do these little bits of things for me, not the whole job. And I know you can bring things into Unity instead of Blender, but I never did quite get to grips with Blender. Oh, too many learning curves. At my age, it's just not good.
Who isn't fighting with Blender?
Yeah.
Yeah, they just get bigger and more comprehensive. I mean, Unity has become like the page.
Dear God, I can't even look at Unity. I've installed it through Visual Studio, and I think I've also installed the regular kit itself. And I've looked at it both ways. I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm looking at. Literally.
There's too much in it, it's the be all and end all
Absolutely.
of the universe. But what if you just want to do one little thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a widget fan. I like little desktop widgets to do one thing and one thing only, like convert an OAR file to a folder of DAEs and then dump them and automate it all for me. But nothing ever works. But I like the idea of widgets. Right. Okay. Um, so yeah, I think we've. James, you've been quite quiet. So you got any thoughts on what we've been talking about? Any questions yourself for Erin or Han?
Well, I guess one question I have is for Avatar Fest. Will there be free avatars?
You know, I'm
He needs
actually
an
not
avatar.
sure. Cherry Manga may bring over some free avatars from her project. I would have to ask her. I don't know. Possibly.
Love getting avatars from Avatar Fest. So much fun. And then just another thought. In terms of building in some of the new virtual reality spaces, just wanted to point out to you there's a controller from Valve who make Steam and Steam VR, and it's called the Knuckles controller. And it's a very interesting thing you may want to look at sometime just to have an awareness, but it wraps around the knuckles of your hand and it tracks your finger movement in the air. And so it looks really promising to have some really facile finger grabbing and manipulation of objects.
And what is it called again?
Is that built for to work with headsets, or is it something you can use on desktop?
It's something for the desktop, so it'd be Steam VR, which is a Windows platform. But it's called Knuckles controller.
So it's part of the Steam VR kit. So if you look that up, then you would be able to find it.
You'd be able to find it through that. Yep.
Cool.
All right. The closest I got to these 3D ones is Leap Motion. It worked for a while. I first used it in high fidelity, and every time I raised my arm in front of me, the avatar's arm raised behind itself. In fact, in real life, it would have been broken,
Yeah, James,
so
to reply to what you're saying, James, that's actually kind of what I was trying to, in a roundabout way, refer to earlier when it comes to building. If you have something like that, potentially you could do, like, say, maybe 3D hand sculpting where you manipulate an object with your hands and fingers and then send it to a 3D printer.
Yep.
Maybe. I don't know.
Could be interesting.
Okay, I'm getting a message. I'm getting a message from Erin in the nice silent back chat we call text, saying she needs to drop out. So you still there? Do I get to say goodbye?
Of course.
No, I think actually we pretty much wrap it for today anyway. It's been great having you. So
I'm glad I got to be here.
Yes, we will actually be back here next week with Inworld Review, and we'll have Art Blue and who knows who else with us then. So we'll call it a wrap for this week. My thanks to Handheld and Erin Kalin, both of whom are doing lots of things, of course, but also working on Avatar Fest, the final act, the last act, or whatever.
Thank you.
October 5th to 7th, although there will be exhibition-wise, it will continue a bit after
the region
that,
will be open until the 30th.
Yeah, so you got about a month to enjoy the region, but the performances and all the main activity, 5th to 7th.
Almost 2, actually.
And sorry?
Almost 2.
November 30th.
November.
Oh, November. Sorry, November.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, that's 2 months. Very good. So you're going out with an extended bang. Quite an extended bang. Wonderful.
Yeah,
and
not
also,
just not just folding up after a week. No, sir.
Very good. Okay, and thanks, of course, to James Out Loud here but also multitasking on all our cameras. So thanks, James.
Oh, absolutely, Mal. I really enjoy it.
Right. Okay, well, we're going to leave you with all that. As you can see behind me, Avatar Fest 2018 opens the 5th to the 7th. If you're interested in volunteering, or indeed getting a pitch, so to speak, get off your ass and do it now. Get hold of Han and Erin, because the space is rapidly running out, although I suspect the volunteers will be welcome.
Definitely,
Anytime.
pretty much anytime.
Yeah.
And I didn't say this. I wanted to thank you for letting me come on the show, Mal. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoy coming on here when I get to.
No, I say it's great to have you. I mean, actually, what we, it's sometimes you just I'm in a position of being grateful for having people because we were getting into. I think when we were doing it regularly, weekly, this particular show, not the news, um, it became a bit samey. Always talking about the same things, a bit stuck in the round. I think, well, who am I going to have this week? And, how much work is it hunting down people to invite them on the show? I much prefer it when people like you and Art get hold of me and say, can I come on? I say, yeah, I'll do one. So no, great having you here, and great, it's nice to have these extended conversations too, and stretch the conversation out a bit, which we have done, which is great. Okay, so thank you all, and I'm out of here. So what, I've even forgotten my sign-off note, haven't I? What is it? I want to wish you all a very good morning, a very good afternoon, a very good evening, or indeed a good tomorrow, depending on wherever and whenever you are. And I haven't done that for months. Hey, that's my party piece. Bye for now.